Ideas All Day, a podcast where we, not experts, discuss our ideas and then place them in the piles, such as the good ideas pile, the ideas pile, and the bad ideas pile. Let's do some intros. As long as I have a roof over my head, she has a roof over hers, Ajax.
Hello.
As long as I have a roof over my head, he has a roof over his head, Alex.
Hello.
And me, who is stressed about now having to have a roof over her head so two other people can also have roofs over their heads. Me, Kate. Hi.
Hey.
Hi. Ajax, will you tell the listeners what today's topic is?
Yes, today our ideas are based on homelessness and trying to help the homeless.
The reason this topic is kind of concerning to me is a lot of people in this country are really just like one bad accident or one bad disease away from being destitute and possibly homeless. My ideas for homelessness, step one, we really have to diagnose why people are homeless. If people are homeless because they don't have a job skill set, if they're homeless because mental illness is preventing them to have a stable life, if they're homeless by choice, like we need to find out why these people are homeless. Because if we find out why, we can have a better understanding on solving the problem. Now, where I am, there is a large homeless population. And I remember not realizing this because typically you just see a homeless person here or there, unless if you're in like a city like San Francisco, which there's just a large number of homelessness, which I'll get to later. You don't really see it as a problem. You just are like, oh, that one poor person, that sucks for them. You know, here's a couple bucks, here's a drink, here's a hot dog, and you go on with your day. I did a 5K, and for the first time ever, they made you wear this like little paper bracelet so you can get refreshments after the race. And they had so much food. Like it was a ridiculous amount of food. We left with food. Like we had extra pretzels, extra bananas, extra apples, extra drinks. And the race people were encouraging it. They wanted you to take the food. As we were leaving, we had to go through this park and just people on benches, like homeless people. Just there had to be from the park to the subway. There had to have been at least 25 to 30 homeless people. And as we walked by, we were just handing out pretzels, apples, bananas, drinks because we didn't need it. We were just taking it to take it. Once we find out how and why these people are homeless, let's just say it's because of mental illness. I think about it was either 20 to 30 years ago, there used to be state-run mental health facilities. And basically what happened was all these people that were in these hospitals were just kicked to the curb. So problem solving solution number one, bring back state-run mental facility hospitals. These people need help. And they're not going to find it on the streets. Then there's solution number two. Maybe they don't have a job skill set and they don't have a place to live and they can't get a job because, you know, they're showing up to interviews like a homeless person and no one's going to want to hire someone who comes in smelling and is dirty and doesn't have a skill set. Also where I live, a lot of abandoned buildings. Old Kmart's, no one's using. They're just sitting there. A lot of Catholic schools have been shut down due to low attendance. So idea number two is why couldn't we use those properties and make little campuses? So you have living quarters and then you have teaching areas. For instance, someone is homeless and they don't have a skill set. They have a place where they can get a shower. They have a safe place to sleep, might even have meals depending. And then they can also learn how to do plumbing, learn how to do electricity stuff, carpentry, welding, things of that nature. Or it's just a place where they can clean up and go on job interviews. So they look presentable and have a higher likelihood of being hired and have a mailing address that they can use for applications and such. And then I was thinking, well, there might be people who just are homeless. They have whatever reason they can't learn a skill set. Well, then maybe that facility can kind of hire them, so to speak, as a cafeteria worker, or as a laundry washer, or as someone who does something for the building. So it's kind of like this self-sustaining building. It's just like a place where people can get back on their feet. And once they have a job and they're making enough money, then they can go and get a place of their own. And my last thoughts on how to kind of not solve homelessness, there's always going to be homelessness, but how to like make it less of a problem is affordable housing. Like that's what happened in San Francisco. You got in California, a lot of California. I think Oakland was another place. Oakland used to be very affordable and they gentrified it. And people who have lived in the neighborhood all their lives were getting booted out because rents went ridiculously high and they couldn't afford staying there. So where do all these people go? If we can develop affordable housing, that's not like when I've gone apartment shopping and you look for affordable housing, there's some places that are affordable, but there's rats or there's no heat. That's not true. Or there's it's just not a healthy living situation. That's kind of like in New York when you get a housing so difficult in the city where you spend something like $2,000 on a studio that has enough room to fit a bed and a table, a coffee table, and that's all the room you have. That's not how humans are supposed to be living. So affordable housing, kind of a homeless campus for learning and staying, and then state-run mental health facilities. Those are pretty much my general ideas. Well, and auditing, finding out why people are homeless. But those are my kind of general ideas on how to not attack, but how to approach the homeless situation. And that's all I got.
All right. So your first idea, diagnosing why people are homeless. I feel like that's an important thing to do because every situation is different and everybody is in their own livelihood because of the circumstances that they went through, and that's different for every single person out there. So having a blanket diagnosis is not always the most accurate thing. You got to find out why people are going through, why they're going through. Some people got into the predicament that they are due to similar situations. So then once you have that data, you can pretty much figure out different ways of helping people. So I like that idea. You should know what's going on before you really can fully diagnose a problem. So I'm going to put that into the good ideas pile.
Before I forget, with the mental health portion with the state-run hospitals, to add on to it, I'm including drug addiction on that. Mm-hmm. because that's also probably a huge reason for homelessness. But yeah, I knew I didn't mention that before, but I wanted to include that under the umbrella of mental health.
Yeah, okay. So for your second idea, number 2, mental health facilities, including drug addiction, I feel like having a place where these practices to help people and a facility that is multifaceted to be able to handle different types of issues that one may have while keeping a safe space for most people is a very important thing. And having it state run would be able to coordinate monetary efforts to be able to keep that going. So I think that's a good idea as well, because you would have a more consistent method of funding where you wouldn't have to be applying for grants all the time or working with another foundation that may not fund the project later on. So having a more consistent method of funding makes sense. So I like that idea. I'll put that in the good ideas pile. Your idea number 3, having old properties such as churches, Kmart's, other places that have long since gone, using them for habitats and for shelter. I feel like that's also a good idea too, because I mean, that space that's not being used, that can be renovated or retrofitted to fit multi-person housing units into one space. I mean, right now it'd be hard with COVID and everything, but that's a big chunk of space where you can actually shelter people with a big solid roof. And number 3, affordable housing. Yes, I feel that is also a good idea because a housing should be affordable. That's what I got. Those are my pilings.
Thank you for your pilings, Ajax.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, what about your pilings?
For your first idea of the homeless audit, as you called it, I believe at one point, just to basically figure out causing the homeless problem, I think it's a good idea because, once you get to the root of the problem, or at least the more common ones, you can better determine a best plan of attack or best plan to tackle the problem and then work your way to the smaller groups in that regard. So you're more effective overall rather than going after a problem that may not be as widespread as you realize for what's causing people to become homeless.
Mhm.
So, it's a good idea. For your second idea of the state-run facilities, I'm actually going to put this in the ideas pile. And the reason I'm doing that is not because having more of them is a bad thing. It's just sometimes state-run facilities are not good. They're just not good. Sometimes they're just places where people get put because they have nowhere else to go. Having more is good, so there's less patients and less people getting put them into one that are usually underfunded, not enough people working there because it's not the greatest place to work, and they don't always treat the people there well, and sometimes it's not the right place for them, but there's nowhere else for them to put them at the time because there might not be a better suited hospital available. So just having more state-run facilities isn't necessarily the best idea. I would rather see state-run facilities, more of them, but better managed and run and audited or funded, rather than just having more of the mediocre ones we already have. So that's kind of where I can't really put in a good idea. It's not that it's a bad idea, but I think it's more of should be more of a launching point to figure out how to better improve the ones we've had and then make more of those.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to use facilities like that.
I agree.
Your third idea of converting old abandoned buildings into housing and training facilities is a wonderful idea. I'm going to put in the good ideas pile because, getting people just the opportunity, a second chance to start over when they may have either made some mistakes or just had a really, really bad period in their life. Never going to be a bad thing to give them a second chance. So for the affordable housing one, I've got to put this in the ideas pile, not because it's a bad idea, but I don't know if it's going to actually fix homelessness. Giving people and making it easier for people to afford housing is great. But the problem is if they don't have a way to afford it, if it's affordable, doesn't make it any better than where they're at right now, because they're, if they have a house or apartment, it doesn't help them stay in it if they don't have a job, if they don't have an income that's helping support and pay for that house, just because it's affordable. Even if it costs $100 a month, if you're making $0, you still don't have enough to afford it, basically. So is it bad? No. Is it something I think that's going to affect it? No, I think that's more, I think, appropriate for low income families or low income people that have lower income jobs and have a hard time maintaining in a place if they can't make rent. Having a better place to go. Still good, but it may help prevent homelessness, maybe. Is the only thing I can think of. It's not that it's a bad idea, but I don't know if it fits for this.
Gonna solve the problem, yeah.
It's almost an idea going towards bad, honestly, because it doesn't help with the problem. It fixes a different problem.
No, I can see that. All right, well, thank you for your pilings. I appreciate it. Ajax, why don't you go over your ideas?
So, for my ideas, my first idea is when I usually go into a city and I notice people habitating on the streets, I often see them over vents where the hot air is coming up from the sewer system. So what I would like to do is harness that heat and have little tents that you can put over these sewer grates that are transporting the hot air. So it could be like a little plastic tent, even like one of those bubbles where people are sitting in restaurants outside now with coronavirus. A bubble, a plastic bubble that you can go in there with some vents up top, so you're not necessarily breathing in all the air that's coming up from the depths, but having some good ventilation, but using the bubble to make it warmer, to have a little bit more toastiness. So that's my first idea. My second idea is acquiring a woodlot of some sort with some trees on it. This could be in the city or in the suburbia. I don't know, maybe a park of some sort. Could have a cleaned up space, an area where you pull the invasives out and there's enough room between trees where you can have a hammock zone, a little hammock land for people to come and use and come and sleep in throughout the day, and also have shelter or structure that can have a little bit of heat and toilets and shelter in case of foul weather. This might be doable in more of the southern climates where it's a little bit continuously warm, not necessarily up here in the north where we get really, really cold winters, but like in Florida where you have nice steady temperatures throughout the season, maybe some sort of outdoor hammock land for people to come and stay at. I was also thinking in this zone there could also be Adirondack style 3-sided houses where people can lay in, so you can have a shelter in case of inclement weather. So that's my second idea. My third idea actually was also affordable housing units too, but within this unit, it's more of a community where you are working within that community and you're working for your rent. So you can have a job within that community that will help pay for your stay at the place that you're living at. So you're working for your rent. I don't know how else that would work, or the nitty gritty, but that's the general gist of that idea. My fourth idea is free activities for the homeless. A workout class where people can come by and meet other people and get, be active. A music session. People can bring over, if they have a musical instrument, a jam session. Sewing machines and a sewing space where people can mend their own clothes. Movies, activities where people can get together and have a scheduled meetup where they can connect with other people, activities for people of like-minded nature. So one place that I've noticed where people will stay the night or have a space to sleep is under underpasses. When you're driving in the cities, I often see like a mattress that's close to the top of the upper end of a roadway. And I would like to renovate these underpasses to have almost like a 3-sided shelter. And maybe even a little bit of electricity in there too, that somebody could go in there and hang out over the night. Which what also excites me about this too is that those are safe places for tornadoes. Like if you're driving down the road and you see an overpass and you need to get out of the way, you can park your car and get in that overpass and hang out for the length of a tornado. Or at least that's what I always assumed. I could be wrong. I need to watch more storms or live out in the Midwest to experience more tornadoes. And also my Sixth idea is sort of like Kate's idea, almost exactly, where the abandoned spaces. Kate mentioned Kmart. I was thinking abandoned boats, malls, business office structures that are already rigged up with power and possible and plumbing as well would be good renovations for multiple family units too. Using those spaces for people to habitate. Those are my ideas.
Thanks. So for your first idea, tents over vents. I have a few problems with this, obviously, because I always find problems with everything. It's just who I am. My first concern is the smell that probably is going to exist inside of that tent. I can only imagine having it like captured and billowing in the tent before like being vented through. But you know, if you're desperate enough, the smell's not going to bother you. But I can see that being a problem. And also, if it's going to be like those plastic bubbles, I don't know why, but as a society, we are so cruel to the homeless, especially like teenagers. These are people, and I can totally see other people who don't want homeless around them purposely breaking these tents and cutting them and rendering them useless. So I'm going to put it in the ideas pile. If there was a way we could use that heat, then I think that would be beneficial. Maybe instead we could just give the homeless access to the subway areas after the trains stop running, so they have a safe place underground, which underground's always 65 degrees or something like that.
I think it's 55.
55, especially in the winter. 55 degrees is very nice compared to 32 on top of a vent. You won't die, but it's not comfortable. So yeah, I like where you're going with it. It just needs some work. Your woodlot park hammock land. I always wanted to own a campground and just have it like be free, that you don't have to pay to use the land and you can just set up. And this kind of like hit me with this. I really like the idea that you can have a place to sleep in a hammock. You have a restroom where you can take a shower, where you can bathe, where you could, do your business. So I'm going to put this in the good ideas. There's some concerns just because like, okay, what happens if you don't have a hammock? Will a hammock be provided to you?
Also, what would be cool too is if the people could help you clean it as well too. So it wouldn't have to be just one person working on it, and then people can clear it and use that land to live there.
Yeah, no, I like it. Good ideas. Affordable housing community, working for your rent. I love this idea. I would like to see a way for homeless people that can match up with people who have that situation that's available. And I think that's like a lot of the problem is the homeless population doesn't have access to resources to be included in that kind of situation. So if there was a way where you can match up the homeless who's like, if you have a person like, oh, I need someone to clean out my shelter restroom in my woodlot park hammock land, I would be willing to let you stay on the land for free if you clean the bathroom once a week or something like that. Yeah, I think it's a really good idea. It's just, how do you get the homeless with the potential landowners?
Well, that would also have to be like a grassroots effort too, a lot of times,
Yeah.
because they probably don't have access to the same technologies that cost money and you have to charge.
Libraries, though. Libraries are great. Free internet access, free computer access, bathrooms, good shit. But anyway, affordable housing via working for your rent, I think, is a great idea. Oh, free activities for the homeless. I'll put this as an ideas, simply because, once again, how do you schedule this with the homeless?
That'd also be like more grassroots. So you have to
Yeah.
go individual, like, hey, here's a flyer with a time. I mean, that's the type of communication
Yeah.
that because I don't know anybody's phone number that is homeless right now.
No. And I don't know, like, if I go down to this park at this time, that I'm going to be able to interact with anybody who's homeless. And some of the activities you mentioned, I don't know if they would be totally into, like, hey, let's do a boot camp style workout. Like, if I'm homeless, I'm not going to want all that extra shit. But like the sewing thing, I think was great. Like you have an opportunity to mend your clothes, or like oh my god, Tide had sent like washers and dryers to New Orleans after the Hurricane Katrina, and they did like laundry services. I think that would be a great thing to like have a scheduled washer dryer truck to show up and do laundry for those people. I think that would be a great idea. And I think that would fall under the free activities idea that you have there. So, ideas, it needs a little work.
Mhm.
Underpass renovations. Eh, I don't like the fact that you're making a 3-wall structure. I'd rather have maybe like 1 wall.
Your underpass can have 1 wall. Mine will have 3 walls.
I see how it is. I don't know. I'm a little torn on this one because I like the idea of using pre-existing structures to create safe havens. But on the flip side, it's like underpasses scare the shit out of me. I used to have to go under an underpass on my way to work, and they just, I don't know, they just freak me out. So, does that make your idea bad? No. I'm just freaked out by overpasses or underpasses. I'll put it in the ideas pile. And then your last idea, abandoned boats, malls, office structures. I like the idea of a mall because you can really utilize that space in some interesting ways. You could have one living quarters. There's already bathrooms, but then you can also incorporate education centers and wellness centers and washing laundromats, and it could be like its own little city.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I really like that idea. Even though it's kind of part mine, I really like that idea.
Hey, add to the pile. Add
Yeah.
to the idea.
So I'm going to put that as a good idea. And that's my pilings.
Thank you.
For your ideas, for the first one with the heat tents over the grates, I'm going to put this in the ideas pile. I like the utilization of basically heat that's just going to waste in the atmosphere. But Kate made up a really good point about the smell, concerns of damage to it. It kind of almost might defeat the purpose of what it's meant to do. And unless it was something that was utilized by more than just the homeless and was more of a permanent structure or semi-permanent structure that can be put up and taken down, but not necessarily something that's easy to damage. Okay, but that's why I can only really put it in the ideas pile. It's a good use of excess energy that's just going to go to waste, but I just can't feasibly, as it stands with the idea, I can't give it a good idea.
Okay.
Your hammock land, as I called it, in the woodlot, I'm putting this in the bad ideas pile. And this is why, because my biggest concern with this one, unless it's managed by like a third party, all I can imagine is that it starts off, with the structure, with the hammocks, everything's great, and then it just slowly degrades into like a shanty town.
I was also thinking that this would be a good thing for like a nonprofit to fund too. Like if it was a managed property that had that additional management structure.
If it's managed, if it's got the funding so it can maintain like so people don't misuse the property, and then I would be more in like the ideas to good ideas pile. But if it's just a woodlot that has the facilities and is every so often just maintained just so it works, I think it could easily devolve into something that's really not going to be helpful. It's just another space for them, yes, to have some shelter, yes, to have a living spot, but it just could devolve into something that isn't necessarily going to solve the problem.
I agree with you.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like, again, managed, great, unmanaged, eh. For your third one, kind of affordable housing, but you work for your rent. I like this idea. I actually put this in the good ideas pile because it reminded me a little bit like a commune almost.
Yeah.
It's basically, it's what it sounded like to me, where for people in this kind of situation, where if they're given an opportunity to reestablish themselves, but in a community that works together, that hopefully that wants to work together, I think it'd be really good. You're usually with communes, you're already giving away everything just to work together. You're already in that spot anyway, so why not? That one gets a good idea for me.
Woohoo!
And they're managing themselves, so they're becoming self-sufficient. And I love self-sufficiency.
Me too.
For your fourth idea, the free activities, I'm going to put this idea going towards good. It just reminds me of basically activities held by community centers.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be for the homeless. It could be focused on people that are homeless, whether it's vocational training or like skill training or just a place to relax. Not a bad idea. So, I just didn't feel, for some reason I didn't feel it was like a good idea yet.
Well, I was thinking this would be more doable if it was in an area that had a whole centralized a group of people that were cohabitating in a same general location, not necessarily a widespread thing, and having like a space nearby, almost like a maker space or just like a space option where people can come in, a community space.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. Like the first thing that came to mind, community center, like whether it's, similar to a boys and girls club or whatever, but that's what it reminded me of, which are all good things. For your fifth idea, the overpass or underpass disclosure, I'm going to put this straight in the bad ideas pile, strictly for safety purposes. Living in an underpass, whether you have 1 wall, 3 walls, 5 walls, doesn't matter. It's not a good place to live. Even if it is more structured, it's not safe. There should, unfortunately, people do live there. It gets them out of the wind, gets them out of the rain. People are driving by, so they might be able to get some, money from them, as is a place that I go past every day. That's exactly what happens. But is it safe? No, I don't like it. I just don't like it. I don't feel it's safe for the people living there. And God forbid something happens, something knocks away, a rock gets loose, someone gets hurt. So I have to put in the bad ideas pile.
All right.
And last but not least, your abandoned building, using it for housing. Obviously, good idea. No questions asked. I love the idea of even the mall. I like where Kate was taking it. And then my mind started going and thinking that, the malls tend to be very big, so different communities can start living in there and then, vying for control of the entire mall. And then it becomes like a war within the mall itself where they vie for control. I don't know why that's where my mind went.
You went to like Apocalypse.
Yes.
That sounds like a great movie.
I was thinking it because every time someone talks about a mall, I think of that one zombie movie. What the heck was it?
Day of the Dead.
Was it Day of the Dead or Zombieland?
No, it wasn't Zombieland. Was it Day of the Dead? Where like the more modern
Romero?
one? Yeah. But no, 100%. Yeah, Day of the Dead. That's all I think about, and it's just boom, 100%. And that was a great movie. So yes, it gets good ideas also because of that.
Cool.
Subcategory of my mind associate with Day of the Dead. Good idea.
Nice.
All right, but that's all I got.
Thank you, Alex, for your piling.
For my first idea, one of the things I always think about when, if you're ever applying for a job or thinking of people that are homeless and if they want to try and get a job to get out of their current situation, all I can ever think of is one of the requirements on a job application you have to fill out are address verifications. You have to live somewhere, which to me almost kind of, if you're unfortunately in a bad situation, you're homeless, you don't have an address, or you have to put in a fake one. You have to put in, a different living facility, which may or may not allow you to do that. So my first idea is literally just to get rid of the address requirement on any job applications. There's other ways to verify people. There's other ways to confirm people's identities, but having that takes away that kind of takes away the embarrassment when someone, if you have to look them up and you find out it's a homeless shelter, you have to find out it's a community center or it's a fake address. Creates it so they don't have that kind of embarrassing moment in that situation. And two, it makes it a little easier for them to be able to put in applications, to put in for new jobs without that kind of concern, which is already hard enough as it is because no one really does paper applications anymore. Everyone does everything online. So it even makes it that much harder. So That would be my first idea. Get rid of the address requirements on job applications. My second idea is a little more about funding. Because one of the things that is always difficult is for any program, whether it's homeless, drug addiction, things like that, it's always hard to keep these programs funded. So my second idea is actually a tax, a $1 tax to every individual that's working. I know that may seem kind of weird. People hate taxes, but a single dollar, not a percentage, just a dollar out of every paycheck for everyone that's working, recorded. And if numbers are correct, per every 2 weeks, which, obviously people that get paid weekly, maybe that would be adjusted to 50 cents. But let's say if people got paid biweekly, it's $1 every other week. That would be about $300 million a year or a month, just going towards these kind of programs or helping facilitate these kind of things. It may not seem like much, but that can actually make a huge difference for a lot of programs just to help alleviate people in those situations or help people in those situations. So $1 tax on every paycheck issued. For my third idea is, I don't even want to say it's almost down to a T to also what Kate said, giving people a place to live, but also a place that also facilitates vocational training. My idea is a little bit, the only thing that's big and different is more giving it a time frame. My idea is more of making it a 12-month program where during the first 3 to 6 months, people are given a place to live free of charge, where everything is paid for. You get your rent paid for, you get your heat, electricity, and maybe an internet. So if you have a phone, you get can get Wi-Fi in the building or in the facility it's in, and then a stipend for food. But just to get you back on your feet, but also during this time frame, doing vocational training, where you have to be there, you have to attend and participate to make sure people are engaging. So hopefully that they're actually trying to work towards making better for themselves. And then after a certain period of time, they have to make sure they're trying to apply for jobs or actually working in jobs and showing paychecks. And then eventually, once they can get a savings, get some sort of funding, can eventually move out once they are settled into a job and can get back on their feet by themselves. But it gives them a pathway that not only gets them back on their feet, but allows more people to come into them, behind them, and use the facilities as well. So it keeps the cycle moving and keep more people coming from poverty, from at least that homeless situation, and getting them back on their feet again. And for my last idea is to abolish houses, just housing in general. No one gets a house, because if everyone is homeless, no one's homeless. Basically, there will be a law that if anyone tries to live in a house or be in a house or anything walled or roof structure, it's against the law. We have to go back to being nomadic people carrying everything on our backs. If you can own a car, but it just can't have a body frame, it's open air. So everyone gets a convertible. But this way, everyone is in the same situation and no one is different. We're all equal in that case. And that's my ideas.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
So, Alex, your first idea of getting rid of the address requirement on job applications. I find this is a good idea. I mean, then you don't have to worry about that aspect of it. It's not necessarily crucial for your job unless it's a reason why you can't make your job. Because if you live really far away and you don't have the means of getting there, that could prohibit you from getting to your job. So, but that's always a topic of discussion that you could always talk about at an interview instead of necessarily on a piece of paper at that first initial job application. So I think it's a good idea. I mean, it puts everybody on the even playing field. We're not even looking at that as an aspect, and you're not automatically going, I think I know where that person lives, and this is what I associate this person with by living in that area as well. So I feel like it just puts everybody on the same playing field. So I like it.
Absolutely. And not to mention, like you brought up a good point. It's like, I mean, I've conducted interviews for hiring people, but the one thing I never ask where they live. I barely look at it on the resume. All I care about is, can you make it to the job reliably? It's if you're coming to that position, you're making the active decision to make enough time to be able to get there on time. That's really all that matters. So where you live doesn't make a difference. So why is that a necessity, requirement to a degree, especially if you can get direct deposit or if people can issue checks and give them out right then and there on the job site?
For some jobs, that is a requirement because, for instance, I know for like certain police departments, you have to live in the county or in the area that you are working. For certain jobs, yes, that is a requirement. That's the only time I could see why you would need to know where that person lives currently.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's when there's legal or certain implications that I can understand. But I couldn't think of a majority of jobs that should require that, have that similar kind of requirement.
All right. So for your next idea of funding, the dollar tax per paycheck. I mean, for me, I don't mind paying that for helping out other people. I would buy into that program. I'm not sure that everybody else would be in the same living situation that I am, that I could be able to afford that. But me, myself, and I would check the box and be like, okay, I'll give you that dollar if it was an optionary thing. I mean, I don't know if I would suggest it to be like a blanket tax for all. So I guess for that, for me, myself, it's a good idea, but I don't know how everybody else feels about it. So I'll put it in the idea pile for everybody else. So your third idea of giving a place to live with vocational training. Just a question, how is this funded?
Most likely by like a state or federal or agency would be funding it.
Okay, so if this is done well and running, if this is well managed with a pretty good program, I can see it doing, like, I mean, it makes sense, it's logical, and it gives training, which is nice and good. So if it's done well, managed correctly, then that's a good idea. Yeah. If it's not, I would put it still in the idea pile because, I mean, it's a good idea, but it has to be executed to be really a good, decent program.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, any of these that all of these that had any sort of vocational training or they have to be run well. Because if they're just people showing up and letting them do whatever they want and just saying they took the course, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't help.
No, and it would help if the staff who were running and the teachers and the professors or whoever was leading the programs had good connections within the community, be able to help with job placement afterwards too, because that is always a big thing as well, because you're like, you did this training, now go off into the world and you will find these jobs. And you're like, how does that work?
Yeah.
So if that had that aspect in that as well, I feel like that would be very beneficial. So yeah, it's good. It's idea pile leaning towards good.
Okay.
Abolish houses. I'm just gonna put this in the bad ideas pile because
but why?
Because how are you going to enforce this?
It's the law.
It's the law, but are you going to enforce it for animals too, who live in trees? And you're like, no, you're not going to use that tree anymore. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to chop down this tree because you can't have a house with a roof, a tree roof.
Why would I enforce it for animals? That makes no sense. That sounds just crazy.
Because you're abolishing for all houses for all.
No, all humans. Let's go with humans.
Oh,
okay.
You're going with humans? Well, I went for everybody. I was being inclusive to all the creatures of the world.
I disagree. Yeah, no, I don't include animals in that. They're just beasts.
Bad idea pile. And those are my pilings.
Fair enough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so my turn. Address verifications, having the address on the job application. So in a previous life, I used to do employment screening. And part of employment screening is criminal checks. And what people don't understand is there's no one universal criminal check that checks everything. So what we had to do is there's a national criminal search, which is shitty. And then you would do it by county. So a client would say, run a national criminal search and the counties for the past 7 years. So we would find their address history and do the counties that they lived in for the past 7 years and run that criminal report. Having the address on the application really isn't necessary because you can do something, an address search based on the person's social security number. So having that spot there, really don't even need it. So I think this is a great idea. I've heard stories. I don't want to say I've known people, but I've heard stories where people were living in their car and they were applying for jobs and they would do like 123 Civic Way because they were living in a Honda Civic. And that was just, or they would do like their license plate numbers. So if their license plate was like 5726 TP, they would do 5726 Civic Way just so they had something to write. But another point, these people are applying for jobs. They don't have an address. How do the employers reach out to them? Do they have a cell phone? Do they have a telephone number they can be reached at? So that's like another hurdle that the homeless have to try to get a job. Because and if they apply online, like how often do they get to check their email? They have to like basically be in and out of the library all the time. And if they don't have a phone, the employer can't call them. And it's like, who are they going to use for references? There's a lot of barricades that are preventing people who want jobs to have jobs, people who could be completely qualified for jobs, but can't get a job because they're homeless, and they're homeless because they don't have a job, and they don't have a job because they're homeless. So if this is one way to lessen that burden and take away a barricade, yeah, good idea. Get rid of addresses on applications. I'm going to put this in the ideas pile. I have certain concerns like Ajax does. Maybe if there was like a threshold, if you're making minimum wage, you don't get the dollar tax. But if you're making $35,000 a year, you're making $20 an hour and up, then you get the dollar tax. Because once again, we don't want to put people who are struggling to get by under more, like I know it's only $1, but still there are people who are fighting for every cent out there. And, you know, knock on wood, I'm lucky not to be one of them at the moment, but there was a time in my life where I really had to take into account like every dollar. Am I eating today? Because if I eat today, does that mean I can't eat tomorrow? And is the food stamps coming in today or are they coming on the 1st? And it's very stressful. So it's an idea. I would put in the good ideas if it had more of a salary threshold ramification.
That's fair enough. I think that's a very good point. And I really didn't take that into a consideration as much versus making it just an easy one where it's like $1, which is less than a cup of coffee nowadays. Where it's something where if you had to take the sacrifice, it's not as bad versus a percentage or something like that where it could be more likely fought. But
yeah, no, I totally see where you were going with that. And I like the direction, but yeah, this makes it a little bit better. So ideas leaning towards good and good ideas with the additional ramifications. A vocational training 12-month program. When you were describing this reminded me of like, what do you call it? Like military school. I don't know why. It made me think of like Catcher in the Rye. I don't know why. But no, this is a great idea. I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah, there's none more I can say. I really like this idea. Abolishing housing for humans. What's scary to me is I feel like this could be something that happens in the future. Like if our society gets really messed up and it's like, oh, look at Richie Rich over there with a house. They don't.
A house over there.
Yeah,
Gosh,
this is what happens when you
you
don't have a healthy middle class and when you have a large upper class and a very large lower class. And just to be clear, this is a bad idea.
What?
But I can see something like this happening. Like if, you know, the lower class gets more and more frustrated because the upper class is making more and more money off of them and unfair practices.
So you have to make that ruling of having no houses. I feel like,
Oh, it wouldn't be a ruling. People would just be like, all right, we know who the elite are. We know who the richest of the rich are. Let's start dragging them out of their houses and burning them down, which I don't want to see happen. So we need a healthy middle class. We need to take care of our lower class and the upper class. How much money do you really need to be happy? But that's my soapbox. I'm stepping off of it now.
I just don't understand why you thought everyone doesn't get a house. No one gets a house. No one lives in a house. It's all illegal. If you have a house, you burn it down. That's how it works.
I would like to see that implemented. I would like to see you try to take everybody out of their houses. The only way that can happen is if you have enough people who don't have houses who would then rip people out of their houses. When people with the houses are a minority and the people without houses are the majority, that's when that situation will happen.
Also, no outhouses, as you put it, because they have walls.
That's
you
fine.
poop in a field.
So there's no plumbing anymore? Like you can't just have a freestanding...
Oh, no, you can have a freestanding one. Absolutely.
Get an outhouse. Outhouses are fantastic.
But no, you can't have outhouses.
No, because they have walls. It could be a hole. It could be a seat you sit on with a hole.
How about
a roofless house?
No. Any structure that's a shelter,
hammocks.
No. Hammock is fine, as long as it's outside.
Hammocks with a tarp over them?
No, because that creates a structure.
It's not a structure because
yes, it is. It's got a roof. It's got a roof.
It has no walls.
Can we wear pants? Because you can make your pants into a structure, just like
you
Michael
can wear
Scott
pants,
did.
but you cannot make them into a shelter.
You would have had me at the no pants rule.
You don't have to wear pants. That's really up to you. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
I can just see me now, sans pants with a torch, marching my way to somebody's house, being like, "You can't have this house."
At least you'll be leading the charge.
No, it'd just be me. Get me drunk enough on a Saturday night. I'm just walking around the neighborhood like, who has houses?
Taking them down.
You can't have it.
Yep. You can drag people out, and then you just plop them outside, and then you walk away. And they just aren't allowed to go back in.
Yeah,
it's
that's a bad idea.
I was between good ideas and bad ideas, so I went for bad ideas.
It's a bad idea. Isn't that like one of the first things you need to establish in order to survive in like any kind of survival situation is you find shelter, food, and
space.
Yeah. There you go. So
that is fake news. That's all I'm saying. That's you don't need it. You don't need it. We were nomadic for many millennia. And it's time to start revisiting that.
That would be heading south real quick if that became a thing.
Absolutely. You want to get away from
the equator's a beautiful time of year all year.
There's no room at the equator anymore because that's where everybody is because all the houses have been abolished.
But that's okay because people will
live on the beach.
Build a sand house.
No,
the herd would be thinned very quickly.
If you built a house, I'd have to go over there and kick it. And then knock all the sand down.
So wait, if you build a sandcastle, just a sandcastle, not to live in, but just to be like, I'm on the beach, I need something to do, let me build a sandcastle.
That is fine because it's not a livable structure.
Okay.
Perfect.
Unless you make it big enough with an area empty in the middle that you can specifically in to shelter yourself.
How about caves?
Caves,
Can you live in caves?
No.
Good question. Oh.
There is literally no if there is whether man-made or natural
caves.
Oh no, you don't have to get rid of them. You just can't live in them.
Why can't you live in caves?
Because the law says no housing.
But it's not
a shelter.
Oh well, screw the law because this is a bad idea.
If this were to go down, caves would be a wonderful place.
The problem is, but then it becomes the people that have caves and those that don't have caves. And then all of a sudden we're back in the same problem we had before.
Well, no, now we're back into a different power struggle, which is the fittest. What do they call it?
Survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest.
Oh, well, that's fine then.
Survival of the fittest is a misnomer anyways.
Well, then it's just against the person who's, the house versus no house.
Yeah, that's
the person
exactly
who can keep the cave gets to keep the cave. Bad idea. Well, thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, share. We're on most podcasting platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Anchor. We have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram page. If you have any ideas for us to discuss, you can contact us at ideasalldaypodcast@gmail.com. But thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening, and may Matt Damon bless you on the rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.